Good morning, Lagos. Time for Freshly Pressed 91 here on Smooth 98.1 on Smooth Breakfast with Valentine
and Ayo.
And this morning we'll be looking at the newspaper headlines with detailed analysis by our guest analysts who are in the studio right now. Earlier on, you heard his voice, and we did promise that he'll be with us on Freshly Pressed 91 in the person of Ugo Dre. Good morning, Ugo.
Hi, morning, Lagos.
Ugo is at Ugo Dre on Twitter. You can follow him there and ask him any direct questions following his analysis this morning. We also have with us in the building, you heard her voice yesterday. She was part of our International Women's Day special here on Lagos Talks 91, and she's back with us again this morning. Thank you very much for joining us, Miss Ireti.
You bullied me into it.
I haven't seen her in a while.
I know, right? So Ugo and I are back together, Lagos.
She did say she missed you last week, actually.
Yeah.
All right, Miss Ireti is at CCOG Lagos on all social media platforms. We'll go straight into our stories, but before then, we'll let you know how you can get involved in today's analysis conversation.
Yes, please send us messages through WhatsApp. Our WhatsApp number is 0809 4440981. That number again, 0809 4440981. On Twitter, we're at Smooth981FM. Use the hashtag FreshlyPressed981. Also on YouTube, we're streaming live. You can leave a comment there and the live chat. It's Smooth981FM Lagos. All right, Lagos, to start with the first story from the Punch newspaper. INEC spends 226 million naira to administer oath on Corpers and others. And seriously, you find it hilarious, but they've given a breakdown of the sums in the story, in the details of the story. If you recall, the Nigerian Senate had initially approved 189 billion naira and then added an additional 45.5 billion naira as part of the 2018 budget appropriation. But your thoughts on this?
Well, I just find the budget, the way we talk about billions in this country, it's quite freaky, isn't it?
Yes.
I mean, Kylie Jenner became the world's youngest billionaire, and everybody's on it's it's major headlines. But yes, the way we talk about billions is almost like, it's in the hundreds. Like it's not a big deal. But interestingly, so of course, we all know that the election is going to be expensive, no doubt. It's certainly going to be. But some of what they spent money on is what actually makes what I find farcical. So they printed 730,000 copies of the oath of loyalty and neutrality forms at 10 naira each. Administering of the oaths on all election personnel and staff at 300 naira per personnel. I have no idea what that means. Because I would have thought, it's a bit like when you go to court, you take an oath, right? They use the same card over and over again. You read it, everybody reads it. So maybe you have 10, maybe 20. Now, so you would have thought perhaps every polling unit, I don't know, section area, whatever, would have maybe 10, 20 each. But to print one for each NYC sort of volunteer, it just... What is the point? And it's how the money is spent. It's actually not so much what the budget is. It's the sort of, there's a word that escapes me, how they just throw it about like it doesn't mean anything. It's without thought, sense, and responsibility. Do you get what I'm saying? Because if you give me money to spend, if I say to you, this is my budget, you say you should already do a project. Even Ugo, you feel compelled to spend the money properly, and what doesn't need to be spent, you give it back or you cut it out or whatever, so you trim the fat, as they say. In this case, INEC doesn't seem to actually trim any fat. If anything, they seem to add the fat onto it. So what's going to happen to these oath of allegiance neutrality forms? Do they print them again every 4 years? Surely the oath of allegiance is the oath of allegiance.
Yes, but
does it change every 4 years?
Initially they had indicated that the number of ad hoc staff needed for the exercise this year's elections would be 1 million. That was a projection from last year. So working by that number, you would say that that's different from the usual number of ad hoc staff that they employ, or general staff that they used in the previous election. So I get where you're coming from,
which is fair enough.
Yeah, so the budget estimate, or the budget that has been spent on these materials and all that,
it's insane.
All the materials needed. Plus, there's another area that I would like you to react to, Mr.
Yeah.
Seeing that we've had reports of cases of burglary, fire, arson in some areas, especially in Abia State and Plateau. We see all these reports that there's no direct account by INEC as to how much they lost and how they're accounting for this.
Yes, exactly. And apparently they're insured. So this makes it even more interesting. So INEC is insured, and it says that they're insured against fire, burglary, electoral violence, and malicious damage for up to 131 million. However, the card readers which were burnt apparently are going to be replaced. So when I say replaced, they're going to be bought again by INEC
Or
and
replaced under the insurance cover?
no, the apparently insurance cover doesn't come up so the insurance doesn't refund you for up to 6 months or beyond till after 6 months rather. So maybe yes, sometimes you spend the money. It's a bit like if something happens to your car, you spend the money and then you get it back from the insurance. But so those card readers, the ones that were burnt, each one of them cost 167,000 naira each, and the SIM card, sorry, the memory cards, 6,000 naira and 6,000 naira each. And so for per unit, it's 228,000. I mean, the figures just curl your mouth.
Don't
and
you
then
like
the
how
SIM
transparent
card.
they are?
Yes, well, this is the problem with this sort of transparency is if you're going to be this transparent, you need to be open to interrogation. So, for me, there's so many questions that this begs and it triggers in me.
Excellent, Stacey. Thank you for analyzing this. And then move on to Ugo Dre for this next story. Thisday newspaper has this report. Telcos cry out over multiple taxes and seek tariff review. They're still echoing the complaints that they put forward again earlier in October 2018. Remember, then they had complained that part of in fact, the sums they invested by the telecommunications companies that's going to 21.45 trillion naira is being threatened by the government policies and frivolous levies imposed on them by local authorities. This time around, they are coming under the aegis of the Association of Licensed Telecom Operators of Nigeria. Ugo, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so this is why, for those who wonder why you have so-called cabals, that's association of companies, this is why you have them, because when you're faced with issues like multiple taxation, regulatory onslaught on companies, sometimes you can't deal with these things yourself. So your association basically just come and confronts the government and probably takes this to the court of public opinion. So what you're seeing here is a coordinated messaging from Alton, and I think this has been going on for about 2 weeks now, because I recall seeing this in the paper sometime last week or last 2 weeks, and in that particular release they were complaining about NCAA. So NCAA was basically people levying all sorts of charges on them, and they were wondering, like, I mean, when would all this multiple taxation end, right? So they are paying their statutory taxes, but then government agencies, federal, are just levying all sorts of taxes and charges on them, and a lot of these things are not statutory. And then now in this particular release, they're talking about state taxes. So two major issues for them. They're like, how come the Federal Ministry of Environment has ceded the EIA oversight functions, as EIA is environmental impact assessment functions, to some, not even to all, to some state ministries of environment to issue EIA certification to its members? So basically, EIA certification, it's important for companies to have that. So because they have MATs and Telecom Master and every reading to get EIA certification, so it's usually issued by the federal government, but the federal government have ceded it to some states. So states are collecting charges, whereas the federal government has actually collected those charges from the telcos. So then states are now coming back to collect those charges again, right? And they're also saying that the states now have power to collect ecological funds from private sector after payment has been made to them by the federal government. So these are just some of the issues. And I recall, I think in the Jonathan government, there was this harmonization of taxes law that they were trying to do. I don't know if that eventually was signed, right? But and that's because of the cases of multiple taxation that companies, all over Nigeria suffer. So whether it's a small company, big company, we just all suffer multiple taxation. Your office one day, and then someone knocks and says it's a radio and TV license, from local government, and then
you have the
state,
local government, then the state, and
exactly,
the federal
all
government.
sorts of taxes, and it's actually very irritating, and it just doesn't help. And we're trying to do well with ease of doing business. These things don't help at all.
Thank you. But I'm wondering, can there be a legal means to seek redress for this? Seeing that, especially in the time in the time I referred to in October 2018, the Director of Legal and Regulatory Services Department of NCC, Mrs. Yetunde Akiniwe, had bemoaned the various multiple taxes that have been levied on these telcos. especially demanded by area boys. I don't know how rowdy these can become. Literally shut your gates and lock it up with their own padlocks and walk away.
But
so how do they address this issue?
But I don't think that with the stealth taxing, which I think is what Ugo is talking about, I think you have to separate it from what happens with the area boys. Look, right of way, which is what it's called in the industry, is Lagos is one of the most difficult places to get right of way. Correct me if I'm wrong, Ugo. And therefore, because so many people own land, etc., the area boys see these opportunities as a way of making a bit of extra buck. And it's not just, even if you go into the hinterlands, the villages and stuff, you see
Rural
that
areas.
in the rural areas, the village chiefs even encourage them to, and it doesn't end there. A lot of people are killed. We don't get to hear about, others don't get, because I used to be in the industry. A lot of people, security guards, even some, technical personnel are killed whilst trying to install these things, and they're held to ransom, all sorts of things that happen. So that's about NCC actually, NCC actually, working with the security agencies to ensure. So if you're going to stealth tax them, then use part of those taxes to ensure the security of the telco personnel who need to install these things. Having said that, though, we are going backwards in our, in the quality of the calls that we're getting these days. I just need to put that out there. We're just going backwards. I mean, backwards.
A few weeks back, they said it actually improved on that.
No, they
scored
haven't.
them higher percentage than they'd done in previous years.
No, they haven't. They can lie to themselves all they want.
So talking about going to the courts, I mean, there are a lot of cases like this in courts already that haven't been decided. And then how many times? I mean, are you going to keep spending your money going to court for cases like this, or do you just want to, get the government to solve this at once and for all? Just we set it up now that it's freezing your accounts. So the company, you'd want to just go withdrawing and the bank tells you that, oh hello, the Federal and Irene just froze your account. And you're like, freeze my account. You didn't even get any demand notice. You didn't get any letter.
And the banks don't inform you.
Yeah. So I mean, is that legal?
It's illegal.
So,
that's the question I was
that's
going
one
to
of the
ask you.
issues
But I think that's the bank. That's again a consumer issue. I mean, it's wide. It's wide. The banks have a responsibility to let you know, not wait till you come in there. What's the point of know your customer? KYT.
Leading to investor apathy. But let's move on to the Guardian newspaper for the next story. Navy Marine Police to carry out 24-hour surveillance of Lagos coastal communities. Ms. Ireti said this is part of the measures to ensure violence-free elections on Saturday, and the Lagos State Commissioner of Police, Zubairu Muazu, made this declaration yesterday. Your thoughts?
Yes, he did. So, I mean, look, that should be regular. It should be a normal thing. It should be par for the course. We have waterways. They should be surveyed and properly policed throughout all the time. We shouldn't have to wait till there's election violence or there's an election period before they do that. But of course, again, in Nigeria, you kind of thank God that somebody woke up one day and listened to Freshly Pressed or played back Freshly Pressed and started doing what some of the things we suggest. Yeah. So this is a good idea. Incidentally, Okota, which as we all know was the
one of the hottest spots during the presidential election.
I don't think it's by the water somehow. I think it's sort of inland. However, apparently the alleged, and we have to say alleged, the alleged leader of the violence, Demola, apparently he's been arrested. He hasn't escaped. He's been taken to Abuja. So that's good. If we could arrest more people like that, that would help. So they do say here, I have to quote the police, our surveillance and patrols are intensified, especially in the identified flashpoints. While patrol on riverine communities will be intensified by the Navy and Marine Police, military personnel and operatives of the Department of State Security Services, DSS, will be stationed and designated to points. That's what we should expect. So, but you go then and you look at the Imo, so there's all these issues going on in Imo State, etc., and it's in another story I have, but in Imo State, and I like the fact that all the unions are staying in Imo State is please, just pay them our salaries, pay the salaries, and if they're saying that at this late point, I hope to God it goes into the head of each and every voter. Do you understand?
Yes.
When you get to that point where you thumbprint, fingerprint, whatever, you think to yourself, okay, who's there right now that isn't paying my salary? He needs to go.
All right, thank you, Ms. Ireti. Let's move on to the next story. Very quickly, Ugo Dre. This is from Premium Times. Oil marketers cheats Nigerians by 198,500 naira per truck of products sold. So the Director Weights and Measures Department, Federal Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment, Mohammed Sidi, went on an inspection tour to some fuel stations in Abuja yesterday, and during that surveillance activity, they discovered that some filling stations are shortchanging customers. Well, take us through the details of it.
So when I opened these that I was reading, I'm like, Director Weights and Measures. Like, you mean we actually have a department that measures weights?
Do you know in recent
Like-
times, this election period, we've seen so many agencies and directors that we didn't know because perhaps some of them are just waking up, so that they can say.
Yeah, so they're now in the news. So
Yeah.
Director Weights and Measures Department. So all they do is just measure weights.
But you've seen them.
God.
You know, you would have seen them. You just don't know what they do. I've seen them at petrol stations. Those people, they come with this long thing and they put it down.
So
but they don't wear
But you
badges,
see,
so
this is
don't
where
know
you get
what
a bit
they're doing.
confused. So this department now, this department is in the Federal Ministry of Industry and Trade.
Yeah.
And they were basically the report here was about especially fuel marketers. So some of us have experienced these things. You're trying to buy fuel at the gas station and they tell you, okay, look your this thing, look at the pump, because they know that. I mean, like if you look away, you kind of feel like you've been cheated, right?
Yeah.
And that's, or maybe you tell them to put 5,000 and they say, oh, they put 1,000. Oh, no mistake. And then by the time you now put the remaining 4, it's never the same again. So, and that's because there's a lot of trust issues here. People don't really believe that whatever it is that you're buying from a lot of these filling stations is actually what it is. And then the worst is actually the diesel tankers. So when they come and supply diesel in your apartment, they I mean, like I was talking to some guy recently and he was like, look, that he just doesn't understand. Like, he has his own tank. His tank is well measured. He's been there with them. He's even put the dipstick in there. Everything seems okay, but then they still cheat him.
Because
only for him to realize that
loaded.
they realized that they were, I think some of them load them with the one I heard was foam mattress or something like that. So that basically just kind of sucks the diesel, and you think that it's just crazy. It kind of sucks the diesel in, and by the time they go, they just squeeze it out. So whatever. So but then another problem too. So this is, like I said, this is coming from the Department of in the Ministry of Trade. You also actually have a department like this in the DPR that I think does something similar. So they also go to filling stations and so it speaks to that issue. Multiple taxes and multiple regulations, and you wonder what exactly is the Ministry of Trade and Investment? What have they got to do with Department of Weights and Measures? I don't know. I mean, I might be naive about this, but I'm not just sure that it's something that should sit in that department. Yeah, Ministry of Trade and Investment. Please, just try. I mean, you should basically be easy in business. It's a department in the Ministry of Trade. I'm just wondering why it's sitting there. I mean, I don't know, because we've always talked about civil service reforms and the need to basically cut down civil service, and this just looks.
Thank you, Roger.
All right, thank you very much, Ugo. Take one or two comments before we proceed to our next story.
Yinka says Director Weights and Measurements of Measures Department measuring fuel. I thought DPR had a division that does the same thing. You see how our civil services is overloaded, and you see people who do not have sense in Nigeria, especially in Abuja. Thank you.
I shouldn't laugh, but I just have to laugh. All right, NEITI unveils oil block owners by January 2020. Ugo, is this a big one here for a landmark exposure? Now, NEITI is the Nigerian Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, and they've said that by 2020, in line with promises they've made, they will expose people behind the companies that are behind the oil blocks.
Yeah, NEITI, since the current executives came in, have been in the news lately. They've been publishing reports regularly. So we're getting a lot of transparency around the oil industry. So this is good. Oil block and who owns it has been a naughty issue in Nigeria for years now. So you've got a lot of reports out there. I'm sure if you search online, oil blocks, you probably see some in some blogs.
Yes.
But there hasn't been anything authoritative,
confirmed,
official. So this would basically now confirm who owns oil blocks, and it's something that interests Nigerians really. And because the Nigerians see oil blocks as some kind of public asset that is basically leased out to people.
But they are.
Yeah, they are basically. So we want to know who's behind this public this oil blocks, and let's actually know whether it's some kind of crony capitalism. And my only worry is that why we have to wait till January 2020 to actually get this. I was trying to get in touch with the executive secretary of NEITI, but I couldn't get in touch with him before this, just to find out why we had to wait till 2020 to get. I mean, I would like to see this report tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'd like to know that's not just any old seamstress.
Because you never know. Maybe Ireti
can have an oil block.
We'll never know.
Because you never know. Ireti's just saying she was an oil
me
block.
and my old blocks, I tell you, you all will be getting a share. That's what I'd like to say. I mean, honestly, our Commonwealth, the way it's just indiscriminately thrown all over the place to whoever is friends with whoever, it's absolutely disgusting. And I think, like Ugo said, this report 2020, gosh, it's too long. We want to know now.
Well, 2020 is in 9 months, so you don't have too long to wait.
No, it's too long.
If you get pregnant today, by the time you give birth, the reports will be out. All right, let's move on to our next story, Mr. Ireti. This is for you. Guber polls, IGP deploys 294 DIGs, AIGs, CPs, again, still in line with assuring Nigerians of how security ready they are for this weekend. What do you have to say about that?
Well, yeah, so they're throwing everything, everybody, and the kitchen sink at it. You know, you kind of wonder, like, so 7 DIGs, this one, there's 10 AIGs, all to each senatorial district, etc., etc. And you see, so there are all these able bodies, senior bodies in the first place, and yet we have so many violence in this country that go unreported, that go unmonitored, and when you do have sort of sudden violence breakouts, you don't have this kind of heavy human artillery thrown at it. But because it's the elections, everybody's waking up, and that's not to criticize, that's just to say, look, if these people existed in the first place, if we had this many people in the first place, senior people, senior police people, why don't we use them often enough? It's kind of disturbing. However, when you go towards down the story, so it says here, this is a quote, however, based on security assessment earlier carried out by the force, some local government areas in Plateau, Benue, Imo, and Taraba states have one commissioner of police, each deployed to coordinate security. Why is it only, I mean, Imo State, why is it only one? You know, whereas and others are getting like 7s and 10s and whatever.
Would it be because of the number in terms of population or the risks in those areas?
Well, he doesn't tell it. Well, I would have thought Imo State was pretty, what's it called? You know,
with regards to numbers,
it's a bit of a flashpoint. It's a concern, but you know, I don't know. It doesn't say whether it's a result of the population. Maybe it is how many people voted, how many cards were collected. I don't know. All I know is, yes, if we had this many people, bodies, able-bodied, senior people in the first place, policemen, gosh, let's not wait till elections to just use them.
All right. Now, just to say, the IG also mentioned that the Nigerian police force shall remain civil, firm, optimally professional, and apolitical. Very key.
That's open to interpretation.
All right. Okay. Moving on to our next story. Let's take 1 or 2 comments actually before we go on to the next story.
MI from Akoka is reacting to the NYSC members, or rather the INEC release of data. They said the curious case of Benjamin Burton, they would have used that money to set up makeshift camps for court members. How much is the cost per capita?
Exactly.
That's taxpayers' money. You do not go reckless with it because it's in the budget.
Yes.
Why can't they just do soft copy?
Exactly.
Shaking my head. Emeka still reacts to the same thing from Victoria Island. He said, please, the form has to be printed for each person, as they have to sign the oath form specifically. The issue is, I believe the fee should be waived, that it's a government agency asking for this too. Blessing from our papa said, the word is flagrancy. That's what the word you're looking for, Mr. Ireti. So administration of
yes,
oath
fragrance.
taking,
Yes.
Administration of oath taking care. Are there no projectors in INEC, or is oath taking no more than what we know it to be? They might be needed to sign on physical papers.
All right, thank you so much, Obi, for your comment. We'll go on to this next one. Again, I mean, earlier on we talked about the fact that they revealed that Nigerians, consumers are being cheated by oil marketers. And now this time it's civil servants who fair diversion of 14.3 billion naira by NEPZA fund. And this story is in the Guardian. NEPZA is the Nigeria Export Processing Zones Authority. Ugo, I would come to you for this story. What do you think about this?
I don't know. Look, I get a bit worried when I see civil servants raising alarm. I mean, I'm like, really, like, come on, you guys. There's gotta be,
Why?
there's no smoke without fire. I get, I mean, perhaps the trust issue, right? So
Yeah.
because when civil servants start to raise alarm, it kind of sounds like there's somebody's cookie about to be taken away, and what have you. So the story basically is that excuse me. So the civil servants are crying that under the Association of Senior Civil Servants of Nigeria are crying that money that was meant for NEPZA, that's the agency that is in charge of export processing zones in Nigeria, and being diverted to the Nigerian Special Economic Zone Investment Company, ZECO. So if you recall, I think sometime last year, the government said they were going to set up, I think, 6 or so export processing zones, and it was going to be managed by like an SPV that was going to be owned by government and some private companies. So they're complaining that government is diverting 14 billion meant for NEPZA to ZECO, and that by diverting this money, Nigerians, they will chop the money, that they're just going to eat it. It's not going to. They're going to be used for anything. They'll probably share it with their cronies and friends, and it might be true, but you know what? I really don't know. So that's why it's difficult to trust some of these things, because you really don't know what's fanning all these fires and what the motives are. The government hasn't said anything about it, but from what I understand, it's supposed to be a private company, and the government is supposed to contribute its own share of equity in this company, and then the private sector is supposed to contribute their own share of equity. And if the private sector is involved, and a lot of these guys, I think it includes Afrexim also. This is some very, very serious private sector companies are involved in this thing. So I really don't see what the alarm here is for. Right. So, and then the government is going to own shares in this company. They have to contribute their own equity now. So, and if they're drawing equity from NEPZA, I mean, look, I fail to see any major issue here.
There's usually no smoke without fire, and the fact that it hasn't happened
from the side of the civil servants. So that's
it hasn't happened yet.
Yeah.
Diversion hasn't happened yet. Just to put it out there, but they fear and they've raised the alarm.
That's where the problem is. When they are the ones fearing, how many has been happening? I mean, which ones have they reported that they've done all these years? Exactly. So I mean, I don't know. I just don't. I don't.
So not really giving it a lot of weight.
I don't buy it.
Okay, we'll move on, but we'll still keep our eyes on NEPZA. So if anything happens, or if the fares are confirmed, then we'll come back to that.
I think the investment partners are ADB. AFDB, I mean, like, so what, I don't know.
Maybe they feel like they've not been carried along.
Everybody wants to be carried along.
The process is not transparent, as transparent as the thing. Okay, final story here from the Daily Times, and hopefully we'll get to read your messages once we're done with this one. Miss Ireti, UK threatens visa ban on politicians inciting violence on social media. Earlier on, they said for the presidential elections that they would, ban all those who are involved in electoral malpractices. But now they've taken it a step further. Could you please?
Well, the quote is, we remind all actors that anyone involved in violence or inciting violence, including on social media, could face restrictions on their ability to travel to the UK. The UK will again field observers teams across Nigeria on March 9th as part of our efforts to support Nigerian democracy. That was said by Katrina Lang, the British High Commissioner. I mean, look, we've all been very disturbed by the amount of vitriol and ugliness, ethnophobia that's taken over the country, especially on social media.
Really sad.
And yes, and if this is part of an effort to make it stop, then I'm all for it. However, a lot of these people are faceless people. They use fake monikers, fake pictures. And yes, some of them are paid by politicians from both sides, by the way, to actually sort of, agitate and cause havoc. If we're smart enough, and when we are smart enough to be able to identify people from, look, a friend of mine was threatened on social media. We reported it to Instagram, but of course we're not able. The Nigerian police can't help you because we still have very, very limited technical and ability to be able to trace these things. But I can also tell you another friend of mine, incidentally, who has a British passport, I must say, in Nigeria. With a British passport, you have to get this thing, you have to get a waiver, even with a British passport now, to go to America.
All right.
Yeah, it's not like getting a visa, you apply for it online. Okay. So anyway, he was turned down Eventually, it was turned down once, twice, and he's like, "What the heck is going on?" Goes for a meeting here in Nigeria at the embassy, and some of the things they asked him for Lagos, listen to this, was all his social media handles.
Yeah.
You want to go ahead and start preaching ugliness and inciting violence and ethnic agitations, they do check your social media handles.
Brilliant.
They absolutely do. Even employers do.
That's
That's
right.
brilliant. Thank you so much for that.
Yinkos on WhatsApp says, well, INEC spent on printing materials is insane, he says. That's the cost that the additional 89 political parties have placed on us. Wasted efforts, wasted funds. Hope we'll learn this the hard way. Benga Akamu sent in this one.
He says, by the way, Ugo, what's the name of that finance house that gave you loan in less than 24 hours?
Oh my God.
He also
DM
said,
me.
DM him. He said, almost all the petrol stations engage in one form of sharp practice or the other in terms of dispensing fuel. A friend tells me to note the pump when commercial vehicles, I've heard this one too, and buy fuel from there. But what do I know? Benga Akomo. So where commercial vehicles use.
Thank you, Lagos. Thank you for being part of Freshly Pressed 91 today. Go back to YouTube, type in the search box Smooth 91 FM to view the recap of the show if you've missed it, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you. Special thanks to Mr. Ireti Bakare-Yusuf. You can find that at CCOG Lagos on Twitter, Instagram,
Thanks for having me.
and at Ugo Dre. Thank you for coming in, Ugo.
Good to be here.
Thank you very much. Lagos, see you at 8:15.
Yes.